Right. So, hello everyone. I know that at least you, Deco, and Deho, and possibly Yusi. I don't know if Yusi is on call. Didn't check, to be
Usually it's on a
honest.
boat.
Oh, on a boat. That you were somehow afraid I might not join. And anyways, yeah, I just made a mistake. I assumed that my country and Finland is in the same time zone, so I thought that 4 p.m. is. I have still some time left, so I can just get prepared. But well, it's not. So luckily, I opened WhatsApp as I wrote on the chat just to write to you, see, hey, can you share the link to join the session because I have no invitation, and then I saw you guys writing to me. So luckily, luckily I was there. Okay, so I'll do the session now about the approvals. Well, I just saw some final slides, what that Yuka was presenting, and I saw that there was something about the approvals as well and Dataverse as well. So let's assume that this is some kind of introduction to the approvals world. My name is Tomasz Poszytek. I'm going from Warsaw in Poland, and well, I'm working with Microsoft technologies for over really 12 years or even more, 20 years. I think this year, this slide is somehow like not up to date. But like ever since I remember, I was working either with business applications or mostly with the workflows, with the processes. And I started with SharePoint Designer, and then as well working with Nintex and some other third-party vendors. And then finally, when Flow went out of preview or the private preview, and it went into the public preview, I started to onboard that platform, that technology, and well, I'm just working with that ever since. So, Bob, if you'd like to connect anyhow with me, then you can just simply navigate to aka.ms/Poszytek or to my YouTube channel, which is even more more interesting. It contains even more interesting content that I'm working on. So I have just half an hour, so I think I will not really go through the basics of approvals because I think that most of you on this call knows like how to create an approval, like what options in approvals we have, that we have like those 3 actions that we can as well, I mean, where you can access approvals that like either on your email or in the action items or in Teams as well. What types of approvals we have, so whether they're working for all or just for custom or for first response. And what I want to really focus on is that part that I call the extended scenarios, because this is something very interesting because the out-of-box approvals are really limited to the very basic scenarios. Like you can only assign that task to multiple employees or just one employee. You can wait for all responses or just the first one. However, you are not able to do many fancy things like reassign any task that is pending for any one response, or you are not able to complete the approval after a specific number of responses is collected, or you can't complete any approval at the moment you really want it to be completed. So in terms of those business scenarios that we are often facing, and in terms of, for example, what was possible in SharePoint Designer workflows, the Cloudflare approvals are really limited. However, thanks to the fact that data is stored in Dataverse, almost anything we want can be crafted as a custom solutions, as a custom workflows or logic. So basically, the tables that are taking part in the approvals data is those I'm just showing is like 2/3. There are as well 3 other tables, but I couldn't really realize or find out what is their role in the whole approval process. So I just removed them from the presentation because I don't really find they're necessary. But basically, those which are very important and are crucial are these tables you can see here. So first, the approval is like the header table. You can where you can find all the information about the approval process, like the title, the description, who is the initiator, whether the notifications should be sent and reassignment should be possible. And once the approval is completed, here you will find as well the general outcome. Then approval request table is the one that stores information about every single task generated in the approval process. So if you assign a task to 10 employees, then here you will find 10 entries, each with the owner that corresponds to the assignee. Now, the approval response table is the one that stores information about the every outcome of the task. So whenever a task is completed, here you'll find information like who completed the task, what was the outcome, what were the comments, if there were any, and of course the timestamps everywhere. The user is the table that connects them all somehow, because in Dataverse we are not using the IDs from Azure AD, but all the user objects are referring to the user table and their internal IDs. However, this table lets you to map a specific email address with the user ID within the Dataverse environment. And finally, the flow approval table is the one that was my latest discovery. And it's very important because this table holds or stores information about every instance of the workflow that uses the approvals actions. And there will be one entry per each action that is being executed. So like if you're using the start and wait for an approval, then there will be just one entry in this table per an instance. If the Cloudflow is using start an approval and then wait for an approval, then you will find here two entries for the same instance of the workflow. And that action that is related to the waiting process contains a value in column called flow notification URI. And this flow notification URI is the crucial one in terms of performing all these custom operations, because once you send a post request to this flow notification URI, you'll actually resume the Cloudflow, which is waiting for the response. That is very simple, but very powerful on the other hand. And now, the very important thing around the approvals is that they're really environment specific. So that possibly you already know, but all the approvals are created and stored in a Dataverse in the environment where they were initiated. So that's one thing. And the other thing that you have to know, and that you possibly as well know already, is that the approvals are waiting only 30 days until they are timed out. And that is as well valid for every other action that waits for anything, like adaptive card sent to Teams and wait for the response. These actions will be waiting only 30 days. However, this doesn't mean that after 30 days an approval is canceled or timed out. It only means that the Cloudflow infrastructure does not allow this action to wait longer than 30 days. However, data in Dataverse is there for years, so the approval can actually take up to unlimited number of time, unless someone deletes data related to approval from Dataverse. So then you can really build custom logic around approvals straight on Dataverse, and your approvals will last for years. So I have just 15 minutes, and I wanted to show you some demos. I don't really want to focus now on what is happening whenever a specific scenario is performed in Dataverse on approvals. So I'll just take it to the demos and describe it as showing the demos. So the first thing I want to show you, if I can get rid of that information above here, is a scenario that we have an approval. Just a small Cloudflow which is used to create approval and then wait for it. And so let's assume that we have a simple approval that is assigned to 3 employees. However, we need this approval to be done now. So the process just cannot wait, or the business owner just cannot wait any longer for all the approvers to express their outcomes. Let's assume as well that the first assignee or one of the assignees have completed their task, if only the process really runs. Okay, so let's say that John Researcher was one of those assignees. He will say that he completes a task. But there are as well 2 other employees who are still waiting, for whom the process is still waiting. And the business owner says, okay, I see that one person has already completed their task. I'm fine with that response because maybe he was like the most important of those 3. And I want this process to move on. Now, how can you do it? Well, basically, with this flow notification URI, this is feasible. So here I have a workflow that is called complete approval. This workflow actually takes as a request parameter just one variable, which is the approval ID. and the second parameter, which is the outcome, right? So there are two parameters that triggers that workflow. And then the workflow does the following. So first, it gets all the assigned tasks in that process. Then it gets information about that approval header so that it knows the title, the description, and so on. And next, it gets all the responses for this particular approval process. So just to check if there were any responses made so far. If yes, it will build a request body that will be sent to the flow notification URI in a moment. And so here, the workflow simply builds two objects, which are a parts of that flow of that request body sent to flow notification URI. The first one is this response list, which contains that kind of objects. So like each response, each responder is recorded here as a separate object together with the response, with the comments they made, and some other information around the data in approval. And the second piece that is a part of that request body is the summary list, which is just a concatenated string of details about each responder who completed their task already. And next, what the flow is doing is getting that flow approval record, because it has to find that flow notification URI. So first attempt is to find the flow approval record related to this approval ID. However, what I found out is that in such scenario where we have two actions, the first one actually creates an entry in flow approval table together with this approval ID. So that's easy to find. Meanwhile, the second entry that actually contains that flow notification URI value has as well the approval ID written, but just as some kind of a random GUID. It's not the same value as the first action. So it's not that really easy, or it wasn't that really easy to find that second record, which I had to find because I needed that flow notification URI value. So then if the value, either flow notification URI is empty, then I'm making a second attempt. And this time I'm calling the flow approvals with a different filter. This time, I realized that all those records generated for a specific instance are having the same run sequence ID. And because the first call, despite the fact it didn't return the flow notification URI, but it returned me that run sequence ID, so I was able to use it. So I'm able to use it for the second request, together with the information, or maybe together with the additional filter, so that it only leaves that row that contains actually a value in the flow notification URI column, because it always starts with HTTPS. And so the second call always returns a flow notification URI. So what then is being done is that the approval record itself is being updated as completed, which will make the whole approval process as well as completed, and as well it will remove the pending tasks from users' action items, for example. So once you mark an approval as completed, users are not going to see pending tasks anymore, even though they are still in the Dataverse. And lastly, I'm composing that request body, which finally looks somehow like that. So first, it contains some properties. Then there is this responses object that you saw. So like for each responder, there is a separate object. Responses summary is this joint array. And this content is being sent to the flow notification URI. All right, and because this request body follows the schema that the action here is waiting for, therefore, once this request body is sent and received, it will be parsed and displayed as those dynamic outcomes. So I will be able as well to use, for example, the outcome in next steps, the same as I would be able if that approval process would be completed straight through UI. Right, so now I'll just move up and simply run that flow. I need to pass these. And let's say it's going to be approved. Now, the point is about that flow notification URI that it actually accepts any kind of JSON you will send. So it doesn't have to be that JSON I just showed you that follows the schema that the action is waiting for. but you can actually send any kind of valid JSON. So you can as well use the approval process to build your own custom approval processes, and then to send custom JSONs to that waiting action. So even if I would send, I mean, that's just a text value, right? But I could actually send whatever I want through, for example, Postman, and that JSON would be simply displayed here in that action as the response, as the output in like one way, so without any modification. However, because here I sent a request body that is, as said, matching that schema, therefore it is now here visible or displayed as dynamic outcomes. However, as said, here what I could use as a body could be just anything, and that anything would be available as the outcomes from that action as well. So that was the first scenario that I just wanted to show you. Just to well, show you, you can actually do anything with these approvals straight from the Dataverse, or straight using Dataverse data. However, that was an example where we were completing a task. So that another scenario that might be useful is in case, for example, we have an employee who is going on holidays, but at the same time is participating in a very urgent processes that simply cannot wait too much time, and they have to be completed quickly. But for some reason, he or she or them, they forgot simply to do that before their holidays. And so the project owner or the owner of the process simply realizes at the moment that actually we are waiting for that approval of that employee, and they are just unavailable. And basically what is important in the approval process is that, or in approval tasks, is that they do follow some principles in terms of reassignment. So first, you are only able to reassign these tasks which are assigned to you, right? So here I have this reassign option. You are not able to reassign the task to yourself. So John is not able to reassign this to himself, right? Because the button is disabled. John is as well not able to reassign the task to Stefan because Stefan is the owner or the initiator. So Stefan would be able to reassign the task to anyone else. However, if John. However, if John is missing, if John is unavailable, then this interface is not available as well. So without John, the task cannot be reassigned. And so in that case, what you can do as well is to either build the substitutions mechanism, or to simply build a small and easy reassignment workflow like I have in here. And what this workflow does, it is taking as the input variables information again about the request ID, about the approval ID, so that it is able to find all the information. Then about then who is the current assignee, so it is able to find that task we want to reassign. And lastly, about the new assignee, so to whom the task should be reassigned. And then basically it does two things after it obtains all this information about the assignees, of course. So first, it is creating a new entry in the approval request table with lookup to all this information which are present at the in the existing task. So it is simply copying the information from the existing task and setting this lookup to the reassigned item, so to the existing approval request item. And finally, once all this is done, then it's simply marking that existing approval request entry as reassigned and inactive. So this way, user who was assigned in the first place is not going to see that task on their list. However, it will be in Dataverse table as a kind of a history, so that if you need to see how the task was being reassigned between users, you will always have that kind of information. You will be always able to retrieve that kind of information. So now once I trigger it, or maybe again, I'll just switch back to the information page, because this way running is just way faster. So again, I need to copy that task, and maybe I'll just show you that I don't have yet this test 2 in my approvals, so that I'm not faking it anyhow, right? So there is no test 2 yet. However, once I trigger it and say that I want to reassign from John to myself, this way, then after the workflow is run, which is quite fast, it's really fast, then under my action items, I would be now able to see that reassign task, right? So there it is. And so this way, another employee could simply approve that task on behalf of the original assignee and simply to complete the workflow, or just to complete that task, and then possibly you can create some more logic to complete the workflow anyhow. Plus, what you could do as well, what I've done actually, what you can follow is that I have this small substitutions table that contains some columns that are used to define like who is going to be on who's going to be away between which dates, and then who's going to be their substitute. And on top of that, there is a Cloudflow that is being used to reassign tasks based on a schedule. I don't know if I have it here. I think it is. Oh, there it is, this check and set substitution. So that workflow simply is triggered in a schedule, and like every morning simply goes through the table, filters out those records which are valid for the current date, and for each such active substitution, it simply reassigns all those pending tasks to the specified user. So that is very useful, and this way you can really write your own substitutions mechanism. Now, if I still have some time left, if I'm allowed to do just one last demo, then what I wanted to show you is as well that having this ability to run directly on Dataverse, you're as well able to complete such a scenario that we had in SharePoint Designer that was allowing us to complete the task after the specific number of assignees have responded. So let's assume we have here, again, 3 assignees, and that we would like this task to be approved after the 2/3 of these assignees have responded. So let me just save it and then run it. And let it be running. So for that purpose, I have another thing here that is called the flow quota approvals. That is just a table in Dataverse, and it contains actually just 2 columns which are really important. So I have it as well here downloaded, and gosh, it was really working yesterday. Like everything was fine. Now what shall I do now? I'll just open it again. Magic. All right. So just one last time. Okay, data is refreshed. So as you can see, it only contains like 2 columns I'm updating. So the first one is the request ID, the approval ID, not the flow ID. That's misleading. So this approval ID, and then the quota. So how many approvals should be collected before the workflow is can be resumed. So now I'll just jump over here, copy this information from here, update it here, and let's say as well that we would like to wait for like 50% this time, right? So in our case, again, at least 2 assignees should respond. And then I'll simply navigate to my approvals and complete my task so that the first response is done. However, this is not enough. So here is the workflow that is going to complete that approval after a specific number of responses is collected. You can see that it has already been run. And the reason it was run is that because that workflow is triggered every time there is new record added to the approval responses table. And then for each of such events, it is again getting information about the current approval. So it looks up it looks up the flow quote approvals table using the approval ID from that record which triggered the flow. And then it's getting, again, the list of all assigned tasks so that it will know how many tasks were assigned in that process. Approval record, so to get the header information and information about other responses that were as well done in that process. And then it's trying to calculate what is the percentage of all those approved to all assigned. In this case, there was just one, so it's 33%. And once it moves, I mean, if the value is above that threshold, so in this case about the 50%, it will move to that yes branch, which is simply doing the same as what the first scenario I showed you. So it is simply approving or completing the workflow, marking all those entries in approval table as completed, and is resuming the Cloudflow, which is waiting for the approval, sending it this that request body to the flow notification URI. So now once John Researcher completes his task, so he will be the second person. Right. Then the workflow here, which is still waiting for approval, and it's here. Yep. It should be now resumed in a moment, because right now that number of responses is, of course, bigger than 50%, right? So it was completed. And here again in the outcomes, I have information about all the responders in the order they made the responses, and the responses object is as well containing information about all those responders together with their responses and comments if they provided any comments. So that way you can really easily do way more business logic. I mean, implement way more business logic in your approval processes than just what is offered out of box. And for example, those functionalities that you possibly know from the old good times of SharePoint on premises and SharePoint Designer. My purpose and my goal was to inspire you and to show you that really when working with approvals with Dataverse, like anything is possible. The only thing that you have to be aware is that obviously you need to have a premium license, because while to work with approvals, like to create approvals, approve tasks, and so on, despite the fact that this data is stored in Dataverse, you don't have to have the license, because all these actions are done on behalf of the Microsoft Flow system user. So it's not really done on behalf of you, of the specific account, but it's done through the system account. And therefore, users do not need to have any premium license to work with approvals within Cloudflows as they are offered out of box. However, if you'd like to extend those approvals and then use Dataverse to do some more magic, to complete some more business scenarios, then for those cases, you obviously need to have the Dataverse, the Cloudflow per user plans at least. All right, and that will be it. That was very lightning speed and very, very fast presentation. I'm usually doing it in like an hour, but I hope that it wasn't too fast, and that those of you who are still with me were able to understand and get that big picture of what you can really achieve when working with Dataverse for Teams. Sorry, with Dataverse and approvals in Dataverse. I just
It was my line.
Yes, I just like, looked at you and like Dataverse for Teams. So
thanks, Thomas. It was good, and I'm glad this is recorded so I can watch it again to fully.
On my YouTube channel, you have all these scenarios like really split in separate videos. So like there is one for reassignment, one for completion, one for cancellation, one for these percentage approvals. So you can really watch it there and get more details about how it was done in detail in steps, step by step. Well. And as well, like what is the difference between Microsoft Teams approvals and Microsoft and Cloudflow approvals? Because those that are using templates in Microsoft Teams, they are as well extended with Microsoft Forms, which I didn't know in the first place. So there is really much more to be discovered yet. All right. Any
Awesome.
questions? I didn't actually see the chat, but I don't see any.
I don't think there are any questions currently.
Yeah. All right. Oh, and hello, Pranav. Long time no see. So no questions.